I'd like to talk to you today about fear. Fear is something that we face, well, not everybody, but many people face on a daily basis. We have a lot of different names for it, such as anxiety and nervousness, embarrassment, shyness, fear, and so on and so forth. They are all basically the same thing. So you can say you feel a little bit nervous, but that's based on fear. And generally speaking, there are going to be two kinds. There's going to be the emotional and the feeling response. One of them is more of an instinctual response, and the other is more of a reaction that is conscious or semi-conscious. It could even have become habitual to the point you don't even realize that it's happening. But fear is ultimately from one of those two categories. So what can we do about the instinctual response to something that has happened or is happening? Well, actually, believe it or not, we can actually reprogram our own brains. There is a very primitive part of the brain called the amygdala, and it is responsible for, under normal circumstances, looking at your emotional patterns and trying to see if there are any precedents to those, which it then uses to decide and influence your brain as to how you should respond, emotionally speaking. And the stronger the emotional response you're having is, the stronger the input of the amygdala will be. And actually it gets to the point where the amygdala effectively has I guess you could call it a bypass circuit that it can use to go around the parts of the brain that normally temper the amygdala's response and go straight to the upper brain and basically turn off some of the functions in your brain when it feels there is an emergency. Now, emergencies boil down to flight, fight, and freeze. I know that often you've heard fight or flight, but actually there's also freeze. That is a valid type of response that is from the amygdala. Now what the amygdala will do is it'll use that bypass, and it'll go directly to the upper brain, and it will affect your memory, your focus, your logic, and your creativity, among other things. And in fact, it can even turn them off. So if you've ever had a situation where you absolutely freaked out and you don't remember what happened, and people tell you did really strange things, that's probably what happened, unless you were drunk or high or something like that. But assuming you weren't, those are the normal things that happen because the amygdala has decided that there's an emergency. Now, please keep in mind, the amygdala cannot tell the difference between a scary movie that you're watching and a killer right in front of you with a gun. No, the amygdala doesn't respond directly to the visual stimuli that you're receiving or the auditory stimuli or whatever. It responds to your emotions. It responds to your state of mind, okay? So if you want to change habits that you have in terms of how you react to things emotionally, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to learn to become what is called mindful or aware. Now, there are various authors out there who have talked about being aware as opposed to conscious. Eckhart Tolle is a very popular one who has thrust himself to prominence by just talking about something that's been known about for a long time. You can read his book, A New Earth, or the previous book. They're basically the same thing. There are lots of other authors out there that talk about mindfulness. And the point is that if we look at consciousness, it starts at unconscious, which is actually in at least two different stages. There is the unconscious stage where you are in deep sleep, you're not dreaming. Then there is the unconscious, where you are dreaming. And above that, there is the semi-conscious state, which you can often experience when you're kind of in this place between sleeping and wakefulness, and you have experiences that are surreal. You may hear or see things that aren't real. You may drift in and out of consciousness. And then, of course, there's the basic consciousness. And when you're in consciousness, you're really not that much different from some of the other animals on the planet. You are basically reactionary. You respond to what's going on around you in your environment. You make decisions based on that. And unfortunately, that leaves you very vulnerable to manipulation. Then there is, above that, being aware or mindful. And in this state is a little bit different. So when you are conscious, you're like, your body's like a ship and engine without a captain. When you're mindful or aware, you have a captain, because what's happening is you're not only observing the world around you, you're also observing what's happening in here, the thoughts you're having, and also the emotions, feelings that you have. And this is important because it allows you to evaluate the situation without getting too involved in it. Now, I'm not saying you should be emotionally unaffected by anything. No, you still allow the emotions to occur. You just don't allow them to control you. Now, I'm going to take an example from when I was younger. I often thought about things that bothered me for hours and hours and hours. It was like a tornado in my head tearing me up, and it could be very distressful. It could keep me from sleeping. And eventually I learned a trick to cause myself to fall asleep quickly so that I could, calm down the brain enough that it wouldn't interfere with me sleeping, and which is commonly called insomnia. Okay. Onset insomnia is often caused by mental excitation. So I learned how to quell that, how to calm down my mind enough that I could fall asleep. I can actually fall asleep in less than a minute. I can take a 15-minute nap, and just like that. And in later years, I learned to apply that to my waking life. As I learned about mindfulness, I discovered, gosh, I can use this to break out of that tornado that was spinning around in my head that would keep me agitated for hours and sometimes even days. Now, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it, but I'm a heck of a lot better than I used to be. I'm a heck of a lot calmer than I used to be. Now, for those of you who knew me when I was very young, you'd say, Glenn, you were always calm. Well, you didn't know me after things changed. But basically, this is something that you really need to learn. It will help you a lot. It will help you a lot if you're being trolled by people online. It'll help you a lot if somebody's trying to bully you, so that you can react in a way that will disarm the situation. It'll also help you in an interview situation, a test, in an emergency, or even in a situation where one of your phobias is kicking in. Now, you say, well, what do you know about that? Well, I had 3 phobias. Okay, and the first one was actually a fear of needles that was caused when I was a kid. I had 2 vials of marrow taken out of my butt bone, the pelvic bone, and they didn't give me any kind of general anesthetic, so I didn't feel it. My mom and dad said I had a bruise on my butt for weeks after that. But you know what they had to do before they took the marrow out of my bone is they gave me a rolled up towel, a hand towel, and they told me to bite on it. And that was to prevent me from biting my tongue or breaking my teeth by grinding so hard, because the pain was really, really intense. And it caused me to have a fear of needles, especially blood draws, for decades. I finally completed my program of defeating that phobia in 2016 when I donated blood to help my wife, who was being treated for cancer and things that were caused by the cancer, directly or indirectly. So I was very happy. The second of my 3 phobias arose from when I was a child. I was at a mall and went into the bathroom, and while I was in the bathroom, 2 young boys who were older than me, they came over to me. I was standing at the urinal and I was about to go to the bathroom, and they said they wanted to watch. Well, I didn't know them. I didn't want them to watch me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go into a stall and I'm going to have some privacy. Well, I went into the stall and they were looking over the door, and I couldn't pee. And that led me to having a fear of peeing in public. So even if I went to a movie and I drank a big glass of soda or water or whatever, afterwards when I got out, I get in line and wait with everybody else because there's always a big line after the movie because there are no intermissions, right? Wow, I would get to the urinal and I would be unable to pee. My bladder would be bursting and I could not let go. It sucked. So then I had to get in the next line to get into a stall so that I could use that, because at least in the stall I felt I had enough privacy that I could let go. I worked on that, and it's been, gosh, probably like 2 decades since I had problems with that. The third and final problem that I had, or the phobia, was the fear of heights, which is, as I understand it, an extremely common fear. This one, I don't even know why I got it. I don't have a specific event that I can recall. I do remember being on a ride with an uncle of mine in New York City. I don't know if it was Coney Island. It was some kind of a hammer thing that went up, and I remember not being able to hold on to the bar because you stood up inside of it, and then you're in this cage. And I remember falling inside the cage, and it was, kind of painful, but not terrifyingly painful. But I just don't know why. Well, anyways, I remember years later I was in Denver visiting my girlfriend at her work site, and she happened to have access to the roof. And the roof was 35 or so stories up. And I went out onto the lower roof with her and climbed up the ladder to the top, no problem. And I got to the middle of the roof, and then, bam, it just hit me. That fear. And my girlfriend, she said to me, "Glenn, just come over to the edge and look. It's beautiful." And I was like, no, it's okay. I'll look from here. And I actually had to force myself to crawl to the edge, and you would have laughed your butt off, okay? But I crawled to the edge, and I didn't want to look. There was a kind of a short wall at the edge. And so I put my hands up and I went like this, kind of like a Kilroy was here kind of thing. And I looked and I was like, okay, that's enough. And I hid behind the wall. And I did that, I think, maybe once or twice more. But ultimately, I could not get myself to stand up. And I had to, I believe I crawled all the way to the ladder. And getting down the ladder was hard. Getting up was no problem whatsoever. But getting down was a challenge for me. I did get down, obviously, but it was a challenge for me. And I realized that was a problem I didn't want to have. And I started working on that. And that was not the first one I started working on. Actually, the needles was the first one. But I started working on that after that. And in fact, she and I, with some other friends in Denver, went to this suspension bridge that's over one of the highest ravines in the world. And I really wanted to get over this, you see. Okay, so you have to understand this. Not only was it a suspension bridge, but it was made with wooden planks along the bottom. And so when a vehicle would go over it, and there were vehicles going over it regularly, it would, like that. A little bit disturbing, but I forced myself to go to the cable at the side, and I held on, and I actually looked down, and I could see a long way down. I could see some kind of big bird of prey. I don't know if it was a vulture or whatever it was, circling down there. That's how deep the ravine was. And but I forced myself to look. I forced myself to look all the way to the bottom, and I fought off the vertigo. I was using mindfulness to prevent the vertigo from taking over, and it worked. It worked. And so over the years, I challenged myself when I came into a situation, be it at a mall when I was on a second floor, third floor, fourth floor, whatever, or I was in a tall building and I felt nervous because I was standing next to a window or something like that. I would always challenge myself. I get in that state of awareness, and I'd go to that window or that edge or whatever, and I might be holding on hard, but I was looking and I was quelling those fears that I was having because they weren't realistic. I mean, I wasn't in danger. And even one time in 2006, my wife and I we went to an amusement park in Denver with some relatives of mine, my step-nieces, and we went on this one ride where it's kind of like I don't know, it's kind of like a bungee chair kind of thing. And, I wanted to know, because I've always kind of thought, well, maybe I'd like to do a bungee jump, or maybe I'd like to do skydiving, try it out, work on my fear. And I have to say, I found it extremely unpleasant. It may have been because I was already nauseous from some of the other rides that I had been on, where one of my youngest niece, she was like spinning it as fast as she could, and I tried to slow it down, and she just spin it again, and I was ready to hurl. So I didn't really feel good already. And so I got on that ride, and I didn't really enjoy the plunge. But I did it. And so over the years, I've challenged myself. And even now, when I go to a mall, if I start to feel like, ooh, I feel nervous, I'm kind of close to the edge, I will stop, and I will address that fear right then and there. I will go to the edge, and I will hold on to the rail, but I will not hold tightly anymore, and I will lean forward as far as I can and look down and quell that vertigo that I'm feeling, that nervousness. And it's really good. I mean, I won't say that it's 100%, but I would say that I'm really close. Now, if this is something that you want to do, if you have stage fright, or you have a phobia, or you have some other kind of an issue with fear, nervousness, maybe you have a problem approaching somebody, there are lots of different ways to deal with it. One of the most important things is you need to learn to calm yourself down. You need to get control of what's here. You need to be aware, first of all, of what's here. You need to stop what I call negative prediction. Okay? You need to stop thinking about what you're going to do and what bad things might happen as a result of it, to the point that you make yourself nervous and psych yourself out. Okay? So if you see I used to be really bad about approaching a woman that I thought was attractive. Okay? So you might look at a beautiful woman, or a woman that you find attractive, or man, if you're a woman, and you say, wow, that person, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to talk to that person, because I really want to find out if that's the kind of person I would like to, spend some time with and get to know. Gosh, what should I say? But oh my, well, what if the person laughs or makes fun of me, or something bad happens? And so I would just psych myself out again and again and again and again and again. It was pathetic. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just speaking about myself, not about you, okay? In the end, yeah, I didn't get defeated by a rejection from a woman. No rejection, okay? I got defeated by myself. And that is most often what happens. That's most often what happens. It causes shyness. It causes, for Christ's sake. That's most often what happens. You defeat yourself. It could be shyness or embarrassment or nervousness or whatever it is, but it doesn't really matter what it is. In the end, I defeated myself. You defeat yourself. So what you need to do is raise your awareness level, see what's happening inside of here, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, and then you need to learn to not allow them to consume you and drag you down, okay? Some kind of meditation would be a good some kind of meditation would be a good choice. Now it depends on which of your senses are your dominant senses. So if, for example, you are a visual person, you might want to look more toward the area of meditation, where you have to focus your mind on something and imagine something. If you're an auditory person, using the ears, you might want to look into chanting meditation. If you're a person who likes to do it, okay, rather than hear about it or see it, you might want to look at Tai Chi or yoga or something along those lines, where you're physically active as a process of the meditation. But whichever one it is, the basis of all meditation that I'm aware of anyways is correct breathing. And correct breathing is about breathing to your abdomen, not to your chest, the thoracic breathing, but to your abdomen, the stomach, the abdominal breathing. And there are different ways. Some people say breathe in and out through the nose. Some people say breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Some people say in through the mouth and out through the nose. Some people say only use the mouth. It's really up to you. There are some reasons why people would go in and out from one and then the other, but it ultimately is your choice, what you feel comfortable with. And you have to learn to focus on all aspects of your breathing. Okay, so you'll listen to the sound of your breathing. You will pay attention to the temperature of the air as it passes in and out. You'll pay attention to the humidity as it passes in and out. You'll pay attention to the feeling of it going in your mouth and past your gums and tongue and teeth and down into your throat until you can't feel it anymore. You'll pay attention to the action of breathing. Just every single aspect, you focus onto that to the point where you just aren't focusing on anything else, and you will very quickly, especially once you've practiced this on a regular basis, you'll be able to calm down almost immediately. 1, 2, 3 breaths, and you're already calm. As long as you're doing this on a routine basis to develop a habit, an automated response to your breathing. Your body will say, aha, gosh, he's doing that breathing, or she's doing that breathing, so it's time for me to calm down. And that's what your amygdala will do. It'll tell your brain to calm down. Okay, so that's the first and most important thing. Now, if you're dealing with a phobia in specific, okay, you're going to need to possibly have a partner. Now, I'm going to say this very carefully, okay? Do not choose a partner who will make fun of you, who will play practical jokes on you related to your phobia. That person is inappropriate for the task of helping you. You need to choose somebody who will be sensitive to your fear, but will not allow you to just run away without facing it ever. So they'll just kind of gently help you take the baby steps. And you start out very little. So example, maybe you're afraid of spiders. I'm not, but maybe you are. And you may look at the word spider and you feel fear. There's no spider, it's just a word, but you feel fear. Or maybe it takes a picture. Maybe it takes an actual spider. I don't know how high of a level of phobia you have, but you'll want to start with whatever causes the least amount of anxiety related to that source of fear. So if you're afraid of spiders and pictures scare you and the word scares you, but maybe when you hear the word, it doesn't scare you quite as much as when you see the word. Okay, so then you're going to want to start with hearing the word said quietly, spider. Okay, and you're going to use your awareness, you're going to use your breathing, and you're going to listen to that sound, and you're going to struggle against the reaction of fear. And when it gets to the point where you feel like you've lost control, you say, okay, I need to take a break. Maybe that break will last 5 minutes. Maybe that break will last 5 months. I don't know. I did not give myself a timeline to conquer my phobias, and so I probably could have done it a lot faster than I did. In fact, I know that it is possible to cure phobias within a number of months. So it's really up to you how often you want to work on this, but remember, choose somebody who will be supportive, who will never mock your fear, who will never take advantage of your fear, who will not play practical jokes while you're working on this fear, who will just be supportive, okay? Who will help you to take the baby steps. Very important. And I didn't use partners. I did this on my own, but I think for a lot of people, it can be helpful. You know, if you feel very uncomfortable sharing your fears with other people, you might want to go my route and do it solo. But again, you need to take it in baby steps. And so we get back to that idea of hearing the sound of the word. When you can get to the point where somebody shouts the word spider and you don't have a real reaction to that, then it's time to move to the word. Now, again, you have to choose the next most threatening thing after the sound. Okay, so maybe for you, it'll be the word. Maybe for you, it'll be the photograph. Maybe it'll be something else. I don't know. Up to you. But you do it in stages. Okay. Now, you may or may not be aware of why you have that phobia. Okay, and this is kind of important here, so I'm getting a little bit closer to the camera. If you're aware, it may or may not be helpful to know why you have that fear. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an expert in that area. I've studied it. But I would suggest that if you can't figure out why you're afraid of it, it's probably something that happened from a time in your life that you don't remember anymore. It could have even been from when you were a baby. Just focus on accomplishing your goal of vanquishing your phobia. Don't worry that you don't understand. Now, if it's really an all-consuming desire to know what caused that phobia, you can go to a hypnotherapist. I know hypnotherapy, okay? And you can ask the person to hypnotize you and find out what caused that fear. And chances are it might be difficult, but the person will be able to help you, if they are actually good at it, to find out the root of the fear. So, but otherwise, if you don't know, it's okay. Just go ahead and work on the phobia, because this thing of the breathing and the mindfulness, those are the basis in taking the baby steps, okay? If you are in an immediate situation where you need to do a speech, for example, I remember I went to a 10-year reunion for my class, and so that would have been when I was like 28 or so, and I just wanted to say something to all of my classmates, and I got up there and I suddenly felt nervous. I don't know why. I just did. But it's like, okay, I want to say this and then I'm going to be done, so just chill. So I relaxed and I said what I wanted to say and I was done. No big deal. But I know there are some people, including my daughter, who have stage fright. And I know there are people who like, every time they have to perform, they'll vomit or they'll become very physically uncomfortable to the point of having diarrhea or something like that. That's okay. This is something that you can work on through the breathing, through the mindfulness, and the baby steps. And please remember, try to dissect what you're reacting to. Now, some things that I would comment on are, be aware of, is there a threat in the audience? Okay? So you might say, are there people in the audience who have guns and they're intent on shooting you if you do a bad job? And the answer is going to be no in most situations. How about a knife? Again, the answer is probably going to be no. How about somebody in the audience has a bomb and they're going to explode it if they hear you say the wrong thing? Again, the answer is probably no. Are they going to throw things at you? Probably no. Are they going to otherwise attack you physically? Probably no. Are they going to heckle you? Yeah, there will be some people who will heckle you, but ignore the hecklers. They're not important. They're trying to get under your skin. Don't let them win, okay? There are different ways to deal with speaking to an audience. Some people, they like to imagine that everybody in the room is naked. Now, if you can imagine you're in a room and you're naked suddenly, and everybody else is naked, everyone, well, almost everyone is going to be extremely embarrassed. Okay, so that makes you as the speaker feel calm. Now, I'm not saying that you as the speaker are going to imagine yourself naked. I'm just saying that you imagine the audience naked, which makes you feel like they're in the same boat with you, because they're naked, they're embarrassed. You're speaking and you're embarrassed. You're all embarrassed together. So it kind of like quells the fear somewhat. Another thing that you can do is don't look anybody in the eye. You could try looking at their earlobe. You can try looking at their chin. You could try looking at something about them, that a particular person that you find amusing or calming, or you could just look over their heads, somewhere over all of their heads where you're not actually looking at the audience, or you can just stare at the cameras. Don't think about things that are going to set you off. So like if you're doing a televised event in front of a potential audience of millions, and I have done that. I've been on television in Indonesia where I was broadcast to millions of people. And so don't think about it. Just relax and pretend that there's nobody else watching other than the person or people that you're talking to, if you're like on a TV show. And you got to learn to stop focusing on the things that make you freak out. Okay? So I hope that answers your questions and helps you somewhat with dealing with your fears and phobias. If you have any questions, please do put them down in the Please do put your questions down in the comments. I will try to respond as long as you're not being abusive. If you're abusive, I'm just going to flag you and ignore you. So why waste your time and mine and everybody else's? Because then you're just, you're just making a mess for everyone. So go ahead. Let me know what you think. Let me know your questions. I will do my best to help you out as best as I can. Again, I'm not an expert. This is just what I have learned over years of study and self-practice. And I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Take care of yourselves. Have a great day.